Alright, we are reading from a book I wrote about 15 years ago, I estimate, called Dallas Pimiento. It's 4 parts, and we are on part 2 at the moment, which is called Book 2 on Bronco 2. Now, I am having some difficulty finding parts 3 and 4, so I may or not continue with this after I get done with this section. But anyway, this first piece, and I'll make a little parenthetical comment here. I've written about 16 books, give or take, and almost every single one of them is composed of very short pieces that are loosely strung together. And this is this next piece this first piece I'll be reading in this episode is one of these, and it's called Saucy Escapades 2. A man on the opposite bench interrupted the attempt by the man to my left to hand me the paper. "Don't give him that," he said sharply. I looked up at him. He looked at me. "He wants to give you his document of lies. Take the truth if you wish to read." He pulled a small, tri-folded sheet from inside his coat. "I'm reading something already, thank you," I replied, nodding at the man. I held up my book a little. The picture of the author was visible. "He reads L.E. Sisman," the man beside me cried. He snapped his finger at his rival. "Take that, you somber judgmentalist." "Perhaps he does not know what he reads," the man opposite suggested. He turned to me. "Do you accept or reject tri-phase determinism?" he asked. "Are you asking me?" "Yes, sir." "I better go find out," I said, rising from my seat. I exited as fast as I could without appearing to be actually running. Up on the upper level again, I sat down far away from the man so concerned about bananas. I did not make eye contact. I put my nose in my book and kept it there until the ferry made its characteristic docking noises. Waiting for the signal to disembark, I turned the book over and looked at the author's photo. It wasn't L.E. Sisman at all, but Reed Whitmore, as if one could get the two confused. I liked the man's face. It was relaxed, humored at the world. My own photographs on the backs of my books were either studies in Eastern European Stoicism or insincere efforts, and here we all are, laughing chums. If I could but lose 50 pounds, appearances might be different. I took out an index card and wrote down an idea for a title to a poem. These characters have names. The buzzer sounded, indicating that we were free to leave the ferry. I took the card in my breast pocket. I watched the old man across the room. I wanted to make sure he left before I did, but he seemed to be in no hurry to get off. It baffled me that he would try to outweight me, just as it baffles me that this story has turned out so poorly. I am sorry that I have wasted your time in this manner. Forgive me. Lurking in doorways. Rats, dodging dried beans tossed at them by the hangnail adapter, sang out their traditional coping song. Originally thought to have been written by Henry Rollins, recent archaeological digs near Macrosanct suggest that the song may have been developed from ancient breeding chants of the most blatantly populous variety. Once the beans were exhausted, a selector switch inside the aggressive mechanism shut down the operation and sent signals to the overhead lights, turning them on. Bragyard turned from watching the display and nodded to Chip, the errand boy. The latter then opened the door and allowed the representatives of the media inside. As they began to ask questions of Bragyard, Chip slipped outside. His own personal press conference was held under the old palm tree next to the popcorn stand and was attended only by himself and one elderly reporter from the Colorado Post. "What do you think the rats signify?" the old man asked Chip. "Hell, I don't know." Chip rubbed the sleep from his eyes. His red vest was dotted with stains. His clip-on bow tie was crooked. "Is Mr. Bragyard fun to work for?" "Fun?" Chip wondered at the word. Across town, the Dandrum brothers were loading kernels of seed corn into the hopper duct-taped to the intake hose of their own hangnail adapter knockoff. "Does it need to be dark in there?" asked Quince, the youngest of the 3 brothers. "That's what our information tells us," Flagler, the next oldest, replied. He traced the strange markings on the side of the old payphone they had used as the basis for their illegal machine. "What did they say?" he pondered. The oldest of the brothers, Stagg, watched the proceedings silently from his place in the cylindrical plexiglass tank of fluorescent green fluid. If all goes according to plan, his misshapen and partially visible brain vaguely formulated the sentence, and then, fresh images cropping up within, let the thought go unfinished. His tertiary tentacles were connected to interface couplings that passed through the tank wall, allowing his brothers to draw power directly from the electrolytic formulations erupting from his submersion. Stagg was happy to be able to help in whatever way he could. As images of his upcoming birthday flashed like old-fashioned camera bulbs in his mind, Stagg wondered how old he would be. What a sad commentary on such a mathematical genius. Knife to a sausage. The sausage is postal profits. The knife is the psychological pressure so long deferred. In order to understand these analogies, it is important for one to work at the post office strictly in a grunt capacity for at least 8 years. If at the end of that time one had not developed the unique insight to see the truth of the above similes, then one is made of stronger stuff than I. Every day I come to work and try to make of my time. Every day I come to work and try to make of my time something more personally satisfying than the supposed moral joys of a job well done. I don't do a good job out of loyalty or pride. I just don't want to get in trouble. The work I do to satisfy myself is purely mental. I walk around in a fantasy world of philosophic speculation. When my break comes, I sit alone and write and draw stupid stuff like this. Is the stupid stuff stronger than the strong stuff? Is the stupid stuff stupider than the strong stuff? Look to me for your answer. Now, getting down to a more graphic exploration of the knife and the sausage, understanding that the images given above are merely a starting point, we see that the sausage is an intestinal casing filled with spices and the ground substance of some animal, usually a pig. The knife is a sharpened piece of steel. The knife is to the sausage as an archaeologist is to a tomb. I used to resent Dallas Pimiento, but now I am glad he is here. Pimiento, on assignment on the outskirts of Macrosanct, infiltrated an archaeological dig led by Dr. Fungrel. Strapping on his knife, Pimiento entered the ancient theater below the main floor of the tomb. On stage, a costumed figure delivering a monologue of honesty. My friends, I am again sorry, but this is not what I wished to write. I have no interest in this tale, if tale it be. I don't know how to go on. What a disappointment. What a sad commentary on such a literary genius. Angered, Pimiento rose from his seat and stalked the proscenium. If you're so bored, why don't you quit? He demanded. I can't, the actor in character replied. I have made commitments. Damn your arbitrary commitments, Pimiento bellowed and jumped on stage. He struck with his knife and brought down the actor as well as the character. Bending over the lifeless form, he removed the mask and saw... well, you know whose face he saw. Part 2. Leeway and Perhaps. Dallas Pimiento called his friend Alan on the phone and simply said the words, leeway and perhaps. He then hung up, secure in the knowledge that 2 years of subtle brainwashing would do its work. If, however, the programmed task was not completed, it did not matter to Pimiento. He had done his part. Anyway, he wouldn't be around to hear about what happened. That very afternoon he was leaving for Tomatoville, his new home. Moving to Tomatoville, eh? Asked his soon-to-be former neighbor. How'd you find out? Pimiento watched the moving men putting his possessions into the back of their truck. Word gets around. The neighbor, whom Pimiento hadn't exchanged more than a couple of hundred words with in the 2 years he had lived there, prepared to go back inside his house and watch the horse beating on TV. He only lingered to see if perhaps Pimiento would give him something, some item not expected to be needed in the new home. If not, it didn't matter. He would go over later after Pimiento had gone and ransack the place anyway. Yep, agreed Pimiento. I guess so. He walked away from the low row of bushes that separated their yards. In the now almost empty house, he went to the refrigerator and drank what was left of the orange juice. He invited the movers to take what they wanted of the remaining food. On an impulse, he went to the linen closet and wrote his name and the dates of his moving in and moving out on the narrow strip of wall to the inside left of the door. He hoped that when the day came that this was discovered, the new owner wouldn't paint over it. After one last look around, he went outside and got in his car. The moving men were done. They would meet him in Tomatoville. Pimiento didn't plan to drive alongside them the whole way. He started his car and left. He didn't wave at anyone he saw on the street. Elvis Costello was good driving music, but, feeling unaccountably sad, Pimiento chose not to put on what could prove to be an emotionally upsetting album. Instead, he picked Judas Priest from among the bag full of selections he was bringing with him. Yes! Damn them! Damn them all! The music seemed to confirm the way he wanted to feel. What had this shithole of a place ever done for him? Things would be better in Tomatoville. The scarf that's in it. Dallas Pimiento watched the movers unload everything at his new home. He didn't open any of the boxes except one after the men left. He watched carefully for this box. Once he spied it, he took it aside and opened it. He dug around inside and pulled out a long scarf. This he wrapped around his neck and went outside to look around the yard. The scarf was brown and red. Characters from the old comic strip Steak Sauce were embroidered along its length. As there were over 20 major characters, this will give you an idea of how long this scarf was. Pimiento hadn't expected the weather to be so cold. Here it was 4 weeks into spring, and he felt chilled. He reflected that Tomatoville lay in a totally different realm than his last home. That must explain it, he thought. His new dwelling was a ranch-style, steel and glass house built on a partially wooded lot on the side of a hill. As he walked around outside, he discovered the remains of a treehouse in the thickest grouping of trees on the left of the house. This was between him and his nearest neighbor, who even now was surreptitiously observing Pimiento. "What kind of scarf is that?" the neighbor, Weiss, asked himself as he peered through his binoculars at the newcomer. He was in the attic of his 3-story house, looking out a disguised porthole. "Why, it's got the old Steak Sauce gang on it," he happily exclaimed. "There's Navy, the lovable oaf, and Desperate Delo. She was quite a character. Hell, this new guy might be all right. Unless," Weiss mused, "he's wearing it as some sort of ironic commentary, whatever that means." "Are you through spying?" Weiss's wife, Treblaine, asked from the doorway. "Just about." Weiss turned from the porthole. He was examining the Knicker boy's old treehouse. If only he knew the story behind that. "Then it is a man?" Treblaine asked. "Yeah, and alone, too, judging by the stuff the movers unloaded." "Why would a single man move into that big house?" "Big? It's not as big as our house." "For a single person it's big," the woman countered. "What do you want him to do, live in a lean-to until he gets a wife?" "He'd never get a wife living in a lean-to. And who says he needs one?" People with kindness. The next day, a deputation bearing a banner reading, "People with Kindness," stopped by Pimiento's new home. He hadn't yet finished unpacking, but this odd welcoming committee seemed not to mind. They handed him a pound cake wrapped in aluminum foil, some religious literature, and a stack of coupons. They would have stayed longer, but Pimiento insisted on leaving to go to the grocery store. His announced intention brought much advice on the subject. They told him what stores were the best in their opinion. As he had never heard of any of the chains these stores belonged to, he wound up following their advice and going to the nearest one. Best one. This store was called Muchawili and was located only 2 miles down the road. Pimiento hadn't bothered to ask the friendly welcomers about local art supply stores. He didn't want anyone yet to know that he was a painter. Better to ask somebody at the grocery store who would have no idea where he lived. Pimiento had many ideas for the art that he would create in his new home. He had already chosen one of the spare bedrooms as his studio. The predominating theme for the next series of paintings was to be the slowly forged chain of events that led one another to the formation of a life. How he would represent that he did not as yet know. The People with Kindness group later discussed the newcomer over coffee at Minerva Squame's house. "I think he's an artist," Doug Mebber declared. He told the others that he based his theory on the number of art books he had seen lying about. That and the overall look at the man. "Perhaps he's a political refugee," one young woman suggested. She, like almost everyone but Doug, seemed to think that there had to be more to Pimiento than mere art. After all, who would be just an artist? Meanwhile, Pimiento used none of the coupons the welcoming committee had given him. They were for products he never used. The religious material went directly into the trash. He got the name of an art supply store from one of the bag boys at the grocery. "Are you studying art?" the kid asked him. "I'm always studying," Pimiento told him. After dinner that evening, Pimiento spent a frustrating 2 hours drawing cartoons. Rough shed stoop. Shoveling beans into his mouth as fast as he could, Cranium sat on the rough-shod stoop. Although he had dumped hot sauce into the beans, he couldn't taste it. When he had scooped up the last bean with his plastic spoon, he tossed the can with the spoon inside at a nearby trash bin. The can hit the rim. It went in, but the spoon landed on the ground. Cranium didn't bother to retrieve it. He was busy wiping off his mouth. He was waiting for someone. A man about his age turned the corner and approached. Cranium looked up at him. He hoped without any expectation written on his face. You the guy that wants to look around in here? The stranger indicated the rough shed with his thumb. That's right, Cranium stood. He extended his hand. I'm Cranium. That's an odd name. I'm Led Jaguan. They shook hands. Jaguan took a set of keys from his pocket. He began going through them. It's what they call me. My real name's Bob Flogger, Cranium noted with thoroughly concealed contemptuous amusement at the other man's overalls. Jaguan fitted the proper key into the door. He put his shoulder against the door, explaining, "It gets stuck." The door opened into a tall corridor within. "We don't get many visitors here." "Well, thank you," Cranium said, "for letting me see it." He might as well get the courtesy out of the way now. He followed Jaguan into the dark entryway. The air smelled of old things and thick dust. "That's funny," Jaguan sounded curious. "Lights aren't working." He flicked the switch up and down several times. "Let's go check the fuse box." Again, Cranium followed Jaguan, this time past several doors whose proximity to each other indicated that the rooms behind them must be unusually small, almost closet-sized. The two men came to the end of the hall, which opened onto what Cranium might describe as a normal-sized room, albeit one with a nearly 12-foot ceiling. In the center of the room, occupying most of the floor space, was a tall platform upon which was mounted a large, inanimate creature. Cranium could not make out what it was. He stared at it wonderingly, while Jaguan fiddled with the fuse box in the corner of the room. Intimidated plant enthusiast. "I have to confess I feel somewhat intimidated here, Miss Ocrea," Borden, one of many plant enthusiasts in Tomatoville, said nervously as he watched the old lady stab the earth around her potted arrangement of bent metal rods with a hand shovel. "And why is that, Mr. Borden?" Miss Ocrea asked without taking her eyes off her work. She studied the effects her stabs made. "Well, I really don't understand non-botanical gardening." Borden glanced around at the grounds of True Scale, the private club for dilettantes, at the other members wandering about. "Mr. Borden, I'll be honest with you," Miss Ocrea looked at the young man in the eye. "If you don't instinctively understand it, you never will." "Oh," said Borden. But that's no reason why you should feel intimidated." Miss Ocrea dropped her little shovel into its cinch sack. "You see, I don't know how I can help you." Borden's confession became more detailed. His hands made an uncertain pantomime in the air. "The job is done," Miss Ocrea smiled. "That job. However, I have something else I'd like for you to help me with." "Does it have anything to do with gardening? Traditional gardening?" Borden asked. "As a matter of fact, no, it doesn't." The lady smiled again. Borden's brain allowed him a briefly visible invented snapshot of he and this not thoroughly unattractive woman intertwined in an act of union. He ruthlessly put aside this thought. He didn't want any evidence of such imaginings to show on his face. "No," Miss Ocrea continued, "no. What I would like for you to do is, if it's no trouble, is to give my nephew some lessons in boat construction." "Boat construction?" Borden repeated. "Nothing too taxing. You know my nephew Casimir. Just let him watch you work on your boat and give him some hints." Seeing the look on Borden's face, Miss Ocrea interposed. "You do construct your own boats, don't you? That's what I heard." "Not in the sense of building one with my hands. My family, the family at large," he spread his hands wide, "builds boats, big boats, far away." He pointed in the direction of downtown Tomatoville, though the distant ocean actually lay in the opposite direction. Stopwatch in purple. Raleigh drew out his mother's stainless steel stopwatch from its special pocket with the watch's tethering nylon filament. He eyed the face of the watch closely. "The time is purple, gentlemen," he announced grandly. "It's best if I move on." "Purple?" echoed several of the children around the short stone table. "What does he mean, purple? What do you mean, purple?" "My work lies elsewhere now." Raleigh took a long stride. It was into the next sunlit patch of the garden before the little boy in the red hat had time to ask, "What does elsewhere mean?" "Greetings, Raleigh." Miss Ocrea held up a china cup in tribute to his arrival. "Have you thoroughly confused the children?" "I hope so, Angela. I hope so. I generally repeat things to add dramatic weight to my statements. It's a trick I learned from watching a lot of bad TV as a child." Raleigh accepted the preferred cup of hot water. "I believe you have told me how your father disparaged your ability to tell when some character on the small screen was to repeat something in that dramatic manner." Miss Ocrea crossed her stockinged legs. "Did I tell you that?" Raleigh mused. "I must have been babbling idly. I don't recall having done so, and I don't see why I would have." "It was some time ago," Angela Ocrea told the rather raffish man squatting on his haunches before her. "Why wouldn't he take a seat? We were talking about our fathers." And you remembered it? That flatters me. The son twisted about in its seat, easing its old bones. Raleigh continued, but then your father was a saint. Not entirely. Although I feel it would be bad manners of me to tell stories of his possible inadequacies or failures to others. Raleigh raised his eyebrows. I guess I don't feel the same kind of reverence or scruples about my parents, or anyone for that matter, when it comes to speaking the truth about them. Does that include me? Miss Okria asked. You see this watch? Raleigh asked, standing up. He started to pull on the watch's tether. My mother used to own this watch. But that doesn't, he stopped. There was no watch on the end of the tether. Visual, a stapling. The big stapler, forgotten by the executors of my estate, was unpacked along with Pimento's other now supposedly unneeded weaponry. Out of habit, he checked the loading alley. It was full of staples. Diamond B's 1.7s, Pimiento observed. He put the stapler on the mantelpiece over the fireplace. He would find a better place later. Returning to the box out of which he had removed the big stapler, Pimiento found a photo album. This album, the only one he had that was bound in red, contained photographs of most of the staplings he had done over the years. Sitting down on the beat-up old sofa, Pimiento opened the book at random. The end of the Dr. Tennis assignment stared up at him. A piece of paper taped to the page next to the photo read, Good job, Bronco. Ah, that rancid appellation. He wished he'd never chosen the stupid moniker. He wondered if a girl named Monica now would have a moniker. Pimiento shut the album in disgust and got on another, this one bound in blue, as were about a dozen others. This one, when opened, took him back to the reception for one of his early one-man shows. Probably not the first, he considered looking at the photos. There was Camilla, the manager of the gallery. She had been a hot-looking number, sleepy-eyed and plump, with a scratchy northern accented voice. Too bad he couldn't have made a move on her. His commitments to both painting and his other work with the ministry kept him from having the time for a woman. That and the unusual nature of his penis. Just thinking about that last subject put him into an even worse mood. He flipped the page and saw a photo of himself standing before a canvas that he had done specifically to please an imagined audience of metropolitan connoisseurs. It was terrible. He shut this album with a bang as well. No more painting what he thought would sell. He would only paint what pleased him, what really pleased him. One image that came to mind was of his own hand holding the big stapler, punching staples through a stack of crappy photographs and paintings, drawing blood and eliciting gasps of panic from everyone who had thought he had Dallas Pimiento figured out. He liked the idea. He'd always liked doing paintings within paintings. Now, as soon as the artist supply store opened up in this rinky-dink dump of a town, he could begin.